Well, you kind of catch me in unfamiliar territory. I normally do my vlog from a motorbike. I'd have a slightly different location given that, I'm talking about something slightly different today, which is about why I decided to give up my 9-to-5 job and become a food delivery driver. I've seen lots of vlogs with people sort of, talking into the camera in their car. I quite like it. It's kind of cool. Or you can do that thing where you kind of park and, when you're doing a sort of a moody, reflective piece, you can stare out the window, put on a sort of a black and white filter and have long pauses when you're speaking, when you're trying to be quite profound and philosophical. What I am discovering, though, on the few occasions when I've talked directly to the camera, is that I give off some real American pilot downed over Syria or North Korea vibes who's now reading out a prepared statement. That kind of monotonous, unblinking delivery when they're trying to show the world that they don't believe what they're reading. I give off that when I'm in front of a camera for some reason. I'm not 100% sure this is the best format for me to talk about this. So what I'll probably do is actually flip over to a delivery so you can actually see me working, and I can explain why I like doing that job in preference to the 9-to-5 I did previously. Okay?
All right, well, this feels a lot better. I feel a lot more comfortable behind the camera than I do in front. And I'm off to pick up an order from Iceland. So why do they do it? Why do they give up a perfectly decent 9-to-5 job, which wasn't massively demanding? Decent pension, lots of perks, decent holidays, to end up doing this. Scrabbling around, delivering McDonald's for something slightly above minimum wage. And it is a good question. And it's kind of a relatively simple answer. I just couldn't face doing it anymore. I couldn't face staring at a computer for 8 hours a day. I couldn't face another bloody video conference meeting which goes on forever with a laundry list agenda which you never got through. I couldn't face endless back and forths in emails on subjects I was not even remotely interested in. That's not to say I wasn't at some point in the job, but for quite a few years I really did enjoy it. But I would say about the last 3 to 4 years, particularly post-COVID, I could barely bring myself to do the job. Getting up in the morning was an absolute strain. I would turn on the computer as late as I possibly could. And even when I was working remotely, I still didn't really feel particularly engaged with the job. However easy that made it. And it did make it a lot easier. But I think it made me feel even more divorced and separate from the job. I'm not advocating for back to office. I think that's bullshit as well. Because even when I went back to office, I basically did the same thing in the office as I did at home. So that was a waste of time, really. And when they gave the option to take voluntary redundancy about, 9-10 months ago, I thought, yeah, it just, I wasn't planning to. As soon as it was off, I was like, yeah, I think I want to do this. I don't think I can face this anymore. I don't think I can do this job for the next 15 years of my life until they hand me the, gold clock or the, engraved pen or something. And I know this is kind of an incredibly selfish thing to do because there are other people affected by this, not just me. I've got a wife, I've got 2 kids, one of them at university. In fact, one of the reasons I started doing food delivery was because we needed a bit more cash to supplement my main income because my son was going off to university. And now I've dumped the main income and I've only got this secondary stream of income, which was a, dumb thing to do in many ways. But I could just feel sort of my lifeblood draining out of me. Every day I was doing this job, I'd just stare out the window and just think, God, I wish I was outside. mean, I'm not a big fan of the outdoors, but just anywhere but staring at a computer. And I think the work had just ceased to be meaningful. I didn't really know what we're doing in our department. I wasn't sure we were having any sort of impact. I felt that so much of the work we're doing was just busy work, and loads of people were really just kind of trying to fill a day with 8 hours when it really wasn't 8 hours to fill. All right, I'm going to go and pick up some stuff. Is that I can take that. Oh, this job's pretty good for the back as well, I tell you. Some people just said, well, just carry on with the job. Put your head down, kind of phone it in, do the least amount needed to keep the job and keep it ticking over, which I don't think would have been that difficult. And then, you know, you can do this job in the evening or do the other stuff that you want to do in the evenings or other times of the day. And there was a part of me that thought, yeah, should I do that? But I think the big problem for me with that is that, you know, however much you think that's feasible, the reality is very, very different. You know, even a job you're phoning in, you've still got to be sort of reasonably on the ball. You've still got to be focused. And you're still going to be tired at the end of the day. And I found I was. In fact, you know, when I was kind of phoning it in a lot of the time, I think it was mentally more stressful than actually doing the job properly. And I just didn't have the energy or desire to do anything in the evenings, apart from this. And this was the one thing that certainly in the last year or so of my job, I used to do this in the evenings at the weekends for a bit of extra cash and sort of get out of the house. And, you know, I found that this really, really helped kind of clear my head mentally and got me back in touch with the kind of real world in a way that my real job really just didn't. And I haven't regretted leaving that job for 1 second. However difficult it gets financially, I know I would be much happier doing this than doing that job. All right, let's go drop this off. So this one. All right, I got another order actually. Just got to pop off to McDonald's to get this one. So it's the first home game of the season for Sheffield Wednesday this year. I've seen a lot of people walking around with t-shirts which says Chansiri. Chansiri is their very dodgy owner who hasn't been paying the players' wages and various other things. So they really do want him out. So I'm assuming they're going to do a bit of a protest today. Of course, people say to me, well, what are you going to do for money? You know, you were earning a lot more in the past and now considerably less. The money I got from the voluntary redundancy is only going to last so long before I start to really need to make a bit more. And you know what? I don't know. I don't know, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay not knowing. I'm okay give myself a bit of time to work that out. And I'll work it out. I'll find something. I think I'm just trying to avoid jumping back into a job which is exactly the same as the job I just left. So I think that's what, you know, I don't want that. I don't want to go back to a middle manager job. I don't want to go back to working in an office. I don't want to go back to, you know, endless spreadsheets and emails. I can't go back to that. I can't. All right. This is a McDonald's where they don't like me wearing a helmet. So I am going to have to take this off. So you will kind of lose camera feed for a bit. All right, let's go off and deliver this one. Now, the assumption might be that, okay, you're not doing the office job anymore. You don't want to do that. So is it basically any job you'd be willing to do? Any job which is, you know, low mental investment and No, I don't. I do. It's this job. I really enjoy being a food delivery worker. And I think I'm pretty good at it. I kind of worked out in some of my videos. I talk about different techniques and strategies for making more money, etc. And I genuinely think that I'm actually pretty good at this job, and I've worked hard to be better at it. And I don't kind of phone it in with it. And some people might think that's ridiculous. Why would you, put effort into it? But why wouldn't you? If you're going to be doing this multiple hours a day, try to be good at it, and also try to make more money out of it. And this is a job where the better you are at it, and the harder you work, and the smarter you work, the more money you'll make. So there is a value in doing that. I think that was one of the problems with the other job, is that I could do 8 hours of solid work, or I could do 8 hours of absolutely phoning it in, and I would get the same amount of money. Which again, I think appeals to some people. I'm not sure it really appealed to me. I quite like the idea of how much I'm earning being in my hands. And I think that's why I quite like this job. No, I've got to stop being British about this. I really like this job. I really like doing this job. Hi there. Oh, let's give us a sec. There's your first one. And there's your second one. 61. Thanks for the tip. Much appreciated. So what I really love about doing this job, well, first off, I just love traveling about my city. I love going out to all the different parts and the suburbs and from the furthest reaches of the city out into the middle of nowhere to the city centre. I go to all points of the compass. I go to suburbs I would never normally go to unless I was doing this job. I think there must be a Palestinian protest today as well somewhere. It's a busy day. We've got the football, we got the protests. Ooh, I bet there's going to be loads of roads closed. And it gives you a very sort of healthy outlook on life as well. I think when you work in an office, you see a very limited range of people and places, and you live in a whatever level of society you're at, you're going to live in that sort of bubble for that level or that class. As I think in this job, you kind of get to meet everyone. I've delivered, in fact, only last week I delivered to what was basically a stately home. It was this massive sort of mansion with stables and sweeping driveways. And then 10 minutes later, you're in one of the sort of the poorest areas of the city, delivering some guy with an addiction problem or something who, and again, the other day that did actually happen. Not long after delivering to the stately home. Hello. Not too bad. Have you got?
Give me 2 minutes.
That's fine, yeah. No rush. It's in here. Hello? Okay, cheers. Are you okay? I could have come up. You could have just let me in.
Oh, I don't know. Normally they not come out.
Yeah, of course we can. They should do. Yeah. It's okay. It's okay. No. I'm not doing anything. Cheers. All right, cheers. Have a good one. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. See, and that's the other thing I like about this job. Just the little sort of superficial encounters like that with customers. I think I like the fact that this job is relatively superficial. Not in a sort of a derogatory way. It's not. I don't mean it's somehow meaningless or has no value. I mean that the kind of contact you have with people doing this job is relatively superficial, and I think I do like that. I'm not sure I want deep, meaningful relationships with my colleagues. I think I'm at my best in these sort of few-minute interactions in restaurants or with customers. I think I do them very well. I've always been quite good at this. Short, snappy little interactions, first time you meet someone, and then you move on. I'm not a person with a lot of depth. And again, not a criticism. I don't contain multitudes, you know. There are some people you kind of, they seem quite simple on the surface, but when you sort of scratch away and learn a bit more about them, they seem very complex, deep people. I think I'm kind of the opposite. The more you kind of scratch away at me, the actual sort of less of me there is. And so when they scratch away with me, they kind of find underneath pretty much what was on the surface anyhow. And it's like, oh yeah, you are kind of like that. That's exactly how you are. But I think there is a place for the sort of robustly superficial in society. Not everyone needs to have layers upon layers. We don't all need to be, you know, onions. I don't contain multitudes. I contain singlitudes, unitudes, God knows. So the point is, you know, I like doing this job. I think I'm pretty good at it. So why not keep doing it? But there's always that kind of little voice in the back of your head. The voice that kind of nags you from, you know, 11 years old at school saying, this is menial work. You shouldn't want to do this. Your goal in life is to get an education. So you get the kind of job where you can kind of sit in an office for 8 hours a day staring at a computer screen. And I know this is well-worn territory. I know that I'm not saying anything new. I'm not the first person to realise that it's a bit of a rat race out there, and that people who work their whole lives to get to a particular position and a job will often turn around and think, oh, is that it? Or, well, what next? So yeah, this is not, you know, it's not radical stuff by any stretch. I appreciate it. But I'm just kind of sharing what I went through, really. I think it's just sometimes nice to hear, particularly if other people are feeling the same, to not think you're crazy, that there are other people who feel the same way. And I think because of that sort of societal pressure, sometimes it's difficult to admit that this is the job I do. There's still that little tiny little voice in the back of my head which says I should be embarrassed about doing this work. Although of course you should never be embarrassed about doing anything that's you know, feeding and clothing your family, but we've been brought up to believe that, you know, cleaners and delivery drivers and shop assistants and these kinds of things, this is all comes under those horrible terms like menial labor or minimum wage work, or they're not supposed to be dignified with a kind of a proper name. It's only 7 items. Can take that. Cheers, mate. All right, just going to pick up another little order from the co-op. So that and that, yeah. Cheers, buddy. All right then, my dear. 7-7. Thank you, Karen. Have a great day. Much appreciated. Bye. Okay. There you go, buddy. There's your first one. Let me just get the second one up. Oh. There you go, sir. And I would be hard pushed to explain why some of the people who, you know, I bumped into in my job at the university in those sort of middle management roles should be paid, you know, 20 times more than the checkout girl at Co-op or Sainsbury's or something, or the barista at Starbucks, because in terms of what they actually do, in many cases the barista at Starbucks has far more productive output than some of the people working in these management jobs. I mean, some of them are just breathtaking in how little they do. Well, I kind of hope you've enjoyed this insight into why I decided to make food delivery my new career. This is not what most of my content is. Most of my content is just me delivering, looking vaguely bemused as I try to find customers' houses and wheezing asthmatically while I lug heavy bags of supermarket orders up and down flights of stairs. Just sort of might be interesting to talk a little bit about how I got to this place and why I'm doing this.